and then from Austin to Chicago is the latest one. Talk about your studio approach. Do you mostly record live?
Yeah.
We try to approach it like it's a gig more, or?
Yes and no. That one was, we tried to go for a really vintage feel on that record, and we did all the rhythm tracks live, some of the vocals live, and then we had, I actually sent the tracks down to Austin and had Kaz do the harmonica stuff and do the sax stuff down there. And then the tracks got sent to Jacksonville, where my old piano player, Jim Macaba, played all the piano stuff. And, it was kind of pieced together, but it sounds like everybody's in a room. Yeah. And for the next record, I'm sort of trying to take a more an approach like looking towards the future. For instance, I saw an amazing documentary on Neil Young's new record called The Noise. And there's a great documentary with the producer, and he's saying, it's cool to be able to put on your 70s pants and go do a 70s sounding record or do a 50s sounding record. Right. He said, but what he's trying to do is create tones for the future. Yeah. And that really turned me on when he said that. I was like, interesting. Yeah. And so I'm actually producing Jimmy Burns' next record. Oh, cool. And so in that, we're sort of going to try and take that approach. We're like, for instance, Los Lobos, who I'm a huge fan of. You actually have David Hidalgo on your record. Yeah. I think sonically they had Chad Blake in their camp for a long time. He was their engineer. And the guy was just a world-renowned craftsman of sound. Yeah. And I think it's a little more exciting. And it's interesting to try to take an approach where you get these old school tones. Like we did, like Austin to Chicago could have been recorded in 1964 or something. Right. But I think it's a little more exciting to try to just look towards the future.
I agree, man. Yeah. I hear a lot of blues records. There's a new label in town that's making records that sound like they are straight out of like 1952, and it's like, well, that's cool, but like, do we really want to live that deeply in the past? We want to make something that maybe sounds a little more contemporary, a little more like alive for today.
Exactly. And I think like a lot of records that are coming out right now, especially in the blues world, they're pretty. I guess the word is kind of flat. They're not very dynamic and really rich. But that stuff has been done. It's been there, and that was revolutionary at the time. Right. So here we are 50 years later, 60 years later, trying to recreate something that was revolutionary 50 or 60 years ago. It's kind of like, it's neat to try to do to see if you can get it, but after you nail it, it's kind of like...
It's not going to have the same effect.
Yeah. It's like, you need to try to think forward and be innovative about your approach on what it is that you're doing.
Yeah. To me, blues and jazz is such a live music form that my favorite, recordings generally are live records. Because, I want to hear somebody like you live. Because I know how much guys like us play live, and that's what we do. Right. So we go into a studio, we're like confined within these walls, our crowd's not there. We got to look at these headphones. What the fuck are those?
Right. No, totally. So, but on the other hand, it does give you an opportunity to just be wide open in terms of the creativity. Yeah. But you also want to be able to replicate what it is that you've done on your record in a live setting too. Yeah. But so many people say to me, "Man, your record's great, but I want to hear it live."
Sure. Sure. So every time I've seen you, Dave, you've been playing like a white 50s Strat.
Yeah, it's a Relic number 875 built by Kineto. I bought brand new, and I just played the hell out of it. It's got thousands of gigs on it. Yeah. And it just, everyone's just like, oh my God, what year is that thing?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen you play anything else.
That's my number one.
Okay.
It's my baby.
So stock Fender pickups?
Stock everything, but it's funny. I've had people actually measure the output of the pickups because it just has a really interesting, different tone for a Strat. Yeah. And the output is exactly the same as normal pickups, but it's really a live guitar.
Those early Relics were really great. Yeah. I remember I did a gig in Israel, and Ronnie Peterson, this guitar player from New York who lives in Tel Aviv, lined up the gig. This was like the first or second year Relics came out. He had me bring him one. Man, it was a great guitar.
Yeah, so that's my number one. And I just, Felix Reyes, who's my collaborator and plays guitar with me, he just built me a kind of like a late 60s white Strat. But we've just been building a lot of parts guitars lately. Yeah. It's been an interesting little side project.
And what are your favorite amps?
Man, I'm absolutely love the 66 Blackface Super.
66?
Yeah, that was the one I regret selling.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, I use Victoria stuff, which I think is remarkable.
Cool. Which Victoria are you using?
I use the Double Deluxe.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
primarily.
Yeah.
And there's one I just played through that was just ridiculous. It was called the Regal 2.
Oh yeah, the
Which is
Regals.
interesting. Yeah, you can change the tube configuration.
Got
change
one
the
on
wattage.
order.
Do you? Dude, I've heard a lot of people it's taken a while to get out.
So what do you do for reverb with the Double Deluxe?
The 63 tank reissue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my main rig right now. But I think that with some of the newer songs that we're going to be doing, I've been like in a real purist mode for a long time where it's just guitar, reverb tank, amp.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to start stretching out and, maybe start, experimenting with some effects live and stuff. Because I've always been a big fan of like the Archangels and just these guys that are a little more contemporary with their sound. And I think we're going to start experimenting with some of that with some of the new songs. And that's another big thing is like we're writing a lot, writing a lot of songs. And I think that the power is definitely in the song.
And you're collaborating with Felix on most of your.
Yeah.
Felix has written a lot of blues for people like Susan Tedeschi and who else has he written for?
He's written for quite a few people in Atlanta. He's played with Grady Fast Jackson, who's a really obscure sax player from Atlanta. He's got a lot of history. He played with Billy Wright, who actually Little Richard copped his entire thing off of.
Yeah, didn't he record for Chess?
He might have.
Yeah.
He might have. But yeah, Fee's been around and he's done a lot of stuff with a lot of very interesting people.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm fascinated by writing partnerships, collaborations. How you guys? What's your your normal writing session like?
Well, we try to do as a song a Sunday. Like we'll go to one of the other's house and it's worked in a lot of different ways. Where sometimes like, hey, I've got this idea, and then I'll go do some paperwork on the computer or something, and then he'll refine the idea while I'm doing something else, and then we'll come back together on it. That's been successful. Another way we work is where I'll give him something that's almost finished, or he'll give me something that's almost finished, and then we'll just fine tune it for one another.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll do a little experiment. We'll just go line for line.
Yeah.
Like you throw a line, I throw a line,
Yeah.
and then hopefully we get a really nice thing.
That's cool.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think the important thing is that you just do it. You keep writing because it's the power's in the song.
So you do a lot of live gigs, Dave. Wondering about your practice techniques, your practice schedules, because there are a lot of guitar players out there watching. Maybe guys who are just starting out in the blues. I mean, I know from personal experience, I used to practice a lot playing along with records. Tell us about how you go about it.
When I first started out, it was just that minor pentatonic scale, ninth chords, and listening to that record right there and trying to break it apart. I listened to, like I said, coming up, Jimmy Vaughn, Anson, Ronnie, yourself, and I would just try to pick these records apart note for note. And with Ronnie's stuff, it was really, really difficult because he's such a technically proficient player. But I would just try to come as close as I could. And I think more importantly, what I was able to capture from those old records was the tone, the sense of the style, and the passion and like the heart that they put into their playing. And they just sort of took what I learned from that and just tried to create my own vocabulary with it, make an extension of what it is they were doing.
Cool.
Yeah. So right now, I honestly am more focused on I'm pretty much doing the same thing, like breaking apart Grant Green stuff or Charlie Parker solos or whatever it might be. That's
advanced.
It's not easy. It's not easy. Like Tiny Grimes. I don't know if you're familiar with Tiny Grimes.
Sure.
He, I used to work really hard on practicing breaking apart his stuff. And Charlie Parker's first recordings were on Tiny Grimes records. So I got a bunch of cool little phrases from early Charlie Parker.
Yeah.
That was super crazy at the time.
Cool. Yeah, he wrote some great blues riffs, man. Great blues heads. Cool. And what else are you listening to guitar-wise these days? You mentioned Grant Green.
Yeah, Grant Green. Guitar-wise, what am I listening to right now? A lot of Los Lobos. I love those guys. The new record is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
What else have I been listening to? Oh, I got my iPod right here. Let me see here. What's on this thing lately? Let's see here. What do we got? The Wood Brothers, who are just at Space.
Oh, yeah.
Love those guys, man.
Yeah.
I've been actually trying to learn some of their songs.
Cool writers.
Just trying to dig into some stuff that's not really familiar.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's an amazing group called La Mar en Fortuna, which is like some Sephardic Jewish gypsy music that I've been listening to lately as well. Some very interesting stuff. Just some stuff outside of the scope of just straight up American roots music. Just kind of like just trying to get familiar with different scales and like some Brazilian stuff, and just trying to open my ears up a little bit.
Yeah, it's great.
So I'm listening to a lot of different stuff, and of course, like, you know, I mean, my iPod's completely schizophrenic. You know, it'll go from like something from a Grant Green record to you know, from Outkast, Big Boy's new record, Shutterbug. You know, like, so I like it all. As long as it's wide open and it's creative and it's done with heart and soul.
Yeah,
I'm in. You know, I'm game. Hi, my name is Dave Herrero, hanging out with Fret 12 and Dave Specter, and I hope you all enjoy.